Hey Cowboys fans, we need to talk about what's going on with this team, because right now, the defense is a complete mess, and it's hard to ignore. On the surface, you could point to some positives. The run defense has definitely improved in certain areas. They're holding up better against the ground game, showing progress in yards before contact and efficiency in short yardage situations. There are flashes of discipline, especially when it comes to tackling close to the line, and they're finally appearing in the top 10 of some key defensive metrics where they used to rank near the bottom. That improvement is real, and it's worth recognizing, but it's only half the picture. Once you start looking at the pass defense, all of that progress disappears. The numbers are brutal. The Cowboys are giving up huge yardage through the air, nearly 9 yards per attempt, and their overall defensive efficiency is among the worst in the league. Third down has become a nightmare, with opponents converting far too often and explosive plays are happening too frequently. When you combine a lack of pressure on the quarterback with secondary coverage mistakes, it's a recipe for disaster. There's a cascading effect happening where one weak link exposes another, and the dominoes just keep falling. The defensive line isn't generating consistent pressure, which means the secondary has to hold coverage longer than they're capable of, and the results speak for themselves. But here's the thing. You can't put all the blame on the coordinator. The players have to shoulder part of the responsibility. When a cornerback bites on a trick play or misses an assignment, that's execution failing, and no amount of coaching can fully fix a lack of discipline on the field. That said, the way the defensive scheme has been designed hasn't helped. Too much zone coverage that isn't working, too much reliance on man coverage that leaves players exposed, and very little creativity in getting after the quarterback. There have been glimpses of success with aggressive pressure packages, but they're inconsistent and often poorly timed. The average time it takes to get pressure is far too slow, and by the time the defense reacts, the quarterback has already made the play. Looking at the personnel, some pieces have been performing well. The defensive tackles, particularly in run defense, have shown they can handle their assignments. Certain linebackers have flashes of competence, and there are a few players in the secondary who can step up in specific situations. But consistency is missing across the board. Some of the top players are underperforming, while others are injured or not seeing the field enough. The coordination between positions is off, which makes everything look worse than it might be on paper. You can't have one unit excelling while the rest of the defense is collapsing. It all falls apart. Now, let's talk about the in-season coaching question, because that's where a lot of debate starts. Should the Cowboys fire the defensive coordinator mid-season? Honestly, it's not that simple. There are very few viable options to take over play-calling duties. The internal assistants are largely tied to the current coordinator system, and promoting someone who hasn't called plays at this level could make things even worse. Hiring an outside coordinator mid-season to overhaul the system, that's practically impossible. The playbook is too complex, the players haven't been executing consistently, and the timing to adjust on the fly is extremely limited. The harsh reality is that a mid-season firing could destabilize the team more than it would improve it. Despite that, there's no denying the defensive coordinator needs to improve. The mistakes on the field are glaring. Poor coverage decisions, missed tackles, slow reactions to play action, and an inability to adjust mid-game have all contributed to the mess. The defense can't just rely on random bursts of pressure or hope that things correct themselves. The strategy needs to be smarter, faster, and more disciplined. If these problems aren't addressed, it's only going to get worse as the season progresses. Even if the run defense has been decent, an over-reliance on it won't compensate for the chaos in the secondary and the lack of pass rush. Opponents will continue to exploit weaknesses, and, eventually, the run defense will suffer too, because the defense is too unbalanced. One of the most frustrating things to watch is how the scheme forces players into impossible situations. When the pass rush fails to reach the quarterback quickly, cornerbacks and safeties are left to cover receivers for longer than they should. That extended coverage exposes weaknesses and leads to big plays. Some players have tried to step up, but the lack of support from the scheme and teammates makes consistent success nearly impossible. You can see the domino effect in real time. A late rush, a receiver getting free, a safety out of position, and suddenly you're watching a game-changing play happen right before your eyes. It's frustrating for fans, it's frustrating for players, and it reflects poorly on the coaching staff. The issue isn't isolated to just one player or one game. It's systemic. The linebackers struggle with assignments, the secondary lacks communication, and the defensive line isn't generating pressure when it counts. Even the better-performing units can't overcome the overall chaos. When a team tries to adjust, the changes often create new problems rather than fixing the old ones. This isn't a matter of a single bad call or a single missed tackle. It's a reflection of deeper issues in strategy, execution, and coordination. Without fundamental adjustments, the defense is doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over. And yet, despite all this, firing the coordinator mid-season remains unlikely. There's a natural adjustment period for any coach in a new system, and 3 games is still very early to judge definitively. The team can still make improvements with the current staff, particularly if players begin executing better. The question isn't just about who should be fired. It's about who is capable of stepping in and fixing things in real time. Unfortunately, the list of viable replacements is short to non-existent, which leaves the team in a tricky situation. Promoting someone internally who hasn't called plays at this level could backfire, and trying to bring in a new coordinator mid-season is unrealistic. That leaves the Cowboys with no easy solution, and the pressure to improve is mounting. Ultimately, the Cowboys' defense is in a precarious position. The run defense has promise, but the pass defense is crumbling. The coordination between players and coaches is off. Execution is inconsistent, and explosive plays are happening far too often. The coaching staff is under scrutiny, but the players also need to step up, or the entire unit continues to underperform. It's a complex, messy situation that requires both strategic adjustments and accountability from everyone involved. If nothing changes, the team risks a season defined by defensive struggles and missed opportunities. Now let's dig into what's happening on the field in terms of personnel, because the problems aren't just strategic, they're individual, and they're compounding. Take the defensive line, for instance. There are some bright spots here. Certain tackles have done a respectable job against the run, holding the line and plugging gaps when they're supposed to. Players like Kenny Clark and Solomon Thomas have moments where they show the ability to control their assignments, especially when it comes to limiting big runs up the middle. But pressure on the quarterback is still inconsistent at best. There are moments where the line looks like it might break through, only to be completely neutralized because someone hesitates, gets double-teamed, or simply fails to finish the play. You can see the frustration on their faces, and it translates into the rest of the defense having to compensate for errors they didn't make. The linebackers have been an even bigger issue. Their positioning, reaction times, and overall awareness are troubling. When a play develops, they're often slow to diagnose, which leaves the defensive back scrambling to cover receivers. Kenneth Murray, Jack Sanborn, and Deone Clark have all had moments where they look completely lost on the field, and that kind of uncertainty is contagious. When your linebackers are off, it affects the entire defensive unit. Running backs are gaining extra yards. Tight ends are finding soft spots in coverage, and the front seven looks disorganized. Even when a player like Nevin Lawson or another linebacker shows competence in run support, the impact is minimal if the defensive backfield is being exploited. Speaking of the secondary, this is where things are truly falling apart. Trayvon Diggs has struggled to maintain consistency, and other corners have been targeted relentlessly. Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson, the safeties, have been beaten on multiple big plays, and when a team identifies mismatches or hesitation in the secondary, they exploit it immediately. The zone coverage often looks like a patchwork, and the man-to-man coverage frequently leaves players isolated against faster, more agile receivers. Even players who are promising in the preseason or early games are showing cracks, which indicates that coaching adjustments aren't sticking or the scheme is inherently flawed. Communication is a major problem, and when a single safety or cornerback fails to rotate or signal effectively, the whole coverage collapses. The struggles aren't just about individual skill. They're about trust and execution. Players have to trust that the person next to them is going to do their job, and when they don't, hesitation creeps in. Hesitation in football can be deadly. That extra half second to read a play can mean a 70-yard touchdown or a missed tackle on 3rd and long. Unfortunately, the Cowboys' defense has shown too many of these moments. When the opposing quarterback senses hesitation, he exploits it with precision. The offense is reading the defense like an open book, and that's a dangerous situation to be in, especially in the NFC where explosive passing attacks are plentiful. Now, some might argue that the issue is mostly schematic, and they're not wrong. The defensive coordinator has put the players in positions that are difficult to succeed in consistently. Excessive zone coverage combined with sporadic man assignments has created confusion. Linebackers have to cover too much ground, defensive backs are overextended, and the line isn't generating consistent pressure. It's almost as if the design assumes near-perfect execution, which, in the NFL, is an unrealistic expectation. At this level, you need systems that protect against mistakes because mistakes happen. Right now, the Cowboys system seems to punish them for even minor errors, which magnifies the struggles of already overextended players. But it's also about decision-making in real time. Even when there's a good scheme in place, the ability to adjust to what the offense presents is crucial. That's where the coaching staff has to be proactive, calling audibles, changing looks at the line, and communicating effectively. That hasn't happened consistently. The defense seems reactive instead of proactive, waiting for the offense to dictate play instead of dictating it themselves. Against high-level quarterbacks and offensive coordinators who excel at exploiting weaknesses, being reactive is a recipe for disaster. Another layer to this is injuries and depth. The Cowboys roster isn't fully healthy in key areas. Some backup players aren't ready to step in and perform at the level needed, which puts even more pressure on the starters. And when injuries hit, which is inevitable over a 16-game season, the lack of depth will be exposed further. That's a structural issue that isn't solved by mid-season coaching changes alone. Depth, preparation, and development all have to improve, and that's a process that takes time and careful management. What's clear is that the Cowboys' defensive struggles aren't a single problem. They're a combination of factors that feed off each other. Weak pressure up front forces secondary players to cover longer routes. Miscommunication among linebackers and defensive backs creates exploitable gaps, and inconsistent execution exacerbates mistakes. Every week, the same patterns emerge. Big plays allowed, late adjustments failing, and frustration mounting among players. The team is capable of better football, but the pieces aren't coming together yet. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Whispers have been swirling through NFL circles, and the latest bombshell comes from none other than Shedeur Sanders. Sources close to the young quarterback suggest that he was recently approached with an offer to join the Dallas Cowboys, a team that has been in search of fresh talent to rejuvenate its roster. But according to insiders, Sanders' response was as emphatic as it was unexpected. He would never consider suiting up for the Cowboys. The news, though unofficial, has already sent shockwaves through the sports world. Sanders, known for his poise on the field and charismatic presence off it, has been a rising star in college football. Analysts had speculated for months about where he might land if he entered the NFL, and the Cowboys, with their high-profile history and media spotlight, seemed like a plausible destination. Yet, the quarterback's alleged refusal flips the script entirely. Fans and commentators alike are trying to parse the reasoning behind Sanders' stance. Some suggest it's a matter of loyalty to his roots. Others whisper that it's a clash of culture or philosophy. Whatever the case, the message is clear. The Cowboys are off his list. The rumor adds fuel to an already heated debate about which teams are positioning themselves as the ideal landing spot for top-tier quarterback talent. Even without a formal announcement, the mere mention of Sanders turning down Dallas has sparked a frenzy. Social media is abuzz with speculation, memes, and hot takes, while NFL insiders scramble to gauge which franchise might now have the inside track. With the draft approaching and front offices in overdrive, this revelation, true or not, could shift the balance of power among teams hungry for a game-changing signal caller. One thing is certain. Whether as a calculated negotiation tactic or a heartfelt refusal, Shedeur Sanders' name is now at the center of one of the season's juiciest rumors. As the NFL rumor mill churns, fans will be watching closely, waiting to see where this young star ultimately lands, and which team will miss out on what might be the most talked-about quarterback story of the year. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.